After I divorced my ex-husband, I wasn't planning on immediately finding someone new. It just sort of happened. By random chance, I met a man named Lewis at a bar. I was drinking to mourn the end of my marriage. Lewis was sitting near me, saw the look on my face, and bought me a drink. From there, we hit it off. Over the next week or so, we went on a couple dates. However, it seemed like Lewis wanted to take things faster than I did. On the morning of Friday, April 13th, he invited me to join him on a dinner cruise that same night. Not only did he spring it on me with very little notice, but I also wasn't comfortable getting on a boat with him just yet, so I declined. Instead of giving up, Lewis said he wouldn't want to go on the cruise alone anyway. Then he suggested I just go over to his house for the evening. I hadn't been there before and it still felt a tad intimate, but I decided to do it anyway. That night I drove to his address. Upon arriving, I noticed that all the lights were off, inside and out, cloaking the house in complete darkness. There was a 2-car garage and a car I didn't recognize parked in the driveway already. Lewis hadn't mentioned living with anyone, so I had to wonder who else was coming over, and why the hell they didn't need to be able to see each other. Confused but still willing to follow through, I parked next to the other car, then got out. I noticed a change in the house before I even took 2 steps. The front door was now open, the light above it still unlit, and Lewis was just standing inside, wearing nothing but underwear and an undone robe. The sight made me freeze. I'd only known him for a few days, but this was so unlike the impression I'd gotten from him. A million thoughts ran through my head, the loudest of which was telling me to get back in my car and leave. I wanted to, but Lewis kept waving me over. Something felt off about his smile. It wasn't warm anymore. There was just nothing behind his eyes, or whatever was there. He was trying to hide it. He wouldn't stop waving either. Going against my better judgment, I chose not to be rude. I walked up to the door and said hi, but Lewis didn't say much. He didn't say anything, really. He just kept waving me over, beckoning me inside his home. Reluctantly, I stepped through the door. Then Lewis closed it behind me, shutting us off in a near-perfect darkness. It wasn't just that the lights were off. All the windows were blacked out too. Not even the street lights were bleeding in. I couldn't see a damn thing. Suddenly, I felt Lewis grab my hand. I asked him where we were going, but he told me it was a surprise. I pulled back, not wanting to be led into some kind of trap, only for him to whisper something odd. Stop breaking character.
Wait, are we role-playing right now?
Yes, you said you liked that, didn't you?
Did I? I mean, I sort of remember, but...
Don't worry about it, just follow me. Role-playing could have meant a lot of things. I was just hoping it wasn't what I thought, but I was just collecting more and more reasons to leave. If any other weird shit kept happening, I would be gone. Next, Lewis led me up a set of stairs that I struggled to climb in the darkness, but I made it. On the 2nd floor, we soon entered into a smaller room, a bedroom, but the lights were still off. Lewis refused to turn them on until he closed the door behind us, and when he did, I was hit with a serious shock. There were 2 other women in the room with us. They had been waiting in the dark, wearing nothing but bras and panties. I looked back at Lewis to find he had dropped his robe to the floor, joining the women in wearing almost nothing. All 3 of them were encircling me, staring with hungry eyes. After a short but silent moment of shock, I found my voice again.
Excuse the hell out of me, but what in God's name is going on here?
God's got nothing to do with it, Britt. Do you know what day it is?
Yeah, it's Friday the 13th. Big whoop, you creepy dork.
I was thinking for the occasion we could try something a little different. Something like a small orgy? All the temptations of the flesh wrapped in a neat bouquet of S&M.
S&M? What's that? Well, the S stands for sadism. Ow! What the hell? Deriving pleasure from inflicting pain.
And the M, if I may, is masochism, deriving pleasure from receiving pain. Go ahead, squeeze.
Hell no! I'm out! I'm not doing any of this weird, freaky bondage bullshit. You 3 have fun with each other all you want. I'm going home. Lewis, you said this bitch would be cool.
Easy, ladies. It's all right. We'll just have to settle for some necrophilia.
No!
This Friday the 13th story happened on April 13th of 2012. which is the last day Brittany Kilgore was seen alive wearing a purple evening gown. Days after filing for divorce, Kilgore met Luis Ray Perez. Kilgore wasn't initially interested when Perez invited her on a dinner cruise, but she agreed after he offered to help her move. Instead, Perez allegedly took Kilgore back to his place where Grace Marie Maraglino and Jessica Lynn Lopez joined them. 4 days later, Kilgore's body was found. Over the following weeks, Perez, Maraglino, and Lopez were arrested. An investigation uncovered evidence suggesting that the trio were into S&M that crossed the line. It was argued that they murdered Kilgore after she refused to participate. Although they pleaded not guilty, the three were all sentenced to life without parole.
One night, I was out with my friends enjoying the nightlife downtown. We were at this club when I ended up meeting an unusual man at the bar. At first, I was quite interested in him. He was foreign, coming from Russia, but our English was about the same level. His name was Nick, and he was a vlogger on TikTok. We traded socials, but I only scrolled through his videos to get a quick glance, promising that I would watch them later when I was somewhere quieter. I could tell he was as attracted to me as I was to him. Because he wasn't local, he said he'd only be in the city for a few days, meaning I only had a little time with him. Nick said he wanted to take me back to his hotel, but I didn't want to have a one-night stand. However, even after I politely declined his offer, Nick kept pushing me to reconsider. That's what he kept saying, as if my decision would be any different 30 seconds apart. Gradually, with each time I smiled and shook my head or said, "No thanks," Nick became more upset, losing his charm and revealing the needy, impatient man-child hiding under his facade. I tried changing the subject multiple times, but he always brought it right back to his only concern, getting me to sleep with him. The final straw was when he began touching me. I managed to push him away by jamming my elbow into his side. Then he started apologizing, but it was already too late for him. But that's what I came to expect with meeting people at clubs. That night, it was quite crowded, so I figured if I made a quiet excuse then quickly slipped away, I would be able to lose him. I stepped away from the bar, weaving through crowds of dancers, looking for my friends. No matter where I looked, I couldn't find them. It seemed like Nick was gone though, so after a bit more searching, I concluded they must have gone outside. I went to search for them there, outside the back of the club. There was a small crowd of people smoking, and a parking lot across the narrow street. No sign of my friends though. There was no bouncer at the back door at that moment, meaning I could just go back in and keep looking. I would find them eventually, right? Except someone else found me first. Nick. He came storming out of the club, heading straight for me. He ran into me, pinning both my arms to my sides, trying to shove his face into mine to make out, but I kept squirming out of the way and telling him to stop.
Come on, baby. Let me make love to you. I promise you'll never forget it.
Get your hands off me, creep! How many times do I have to say no?
What if we went to my car for a quickie?
No!
Stop being such a tease, bitch. Just let this happen.
Will somebody please help me already?
Back off! She's coming with me!
Suddenly, Nick started dragging me across the street. I dug my heels into the ground and pulled back, but it felt like he was going to rip my arm out of its socket. At last, someone came up and got between us. The moment they broke Nick's grip, I made a break for it. I ran back into the club and yelled for security. The noise also alerted my friends, who found me at the same time as the bouncer. We all went out together to confront Nick, but despite the effort from the people outside to restrain him, he had gotten away. All we saw was him getting into his car and then speeding off. After that, my night was ruined. I knew, or at least I thought, that the whole ordeal was over, but I still didn't feel like hanging out anymore. My friends helped me get home. Then I changed out of my club outfit, took a shower, put on some comfy clothes, and tried to relax. Just as I laid down, I remembered I had followed Nick on TikTok. I pulled up his account only so I could block him, but then I got curious. His latest video was from that night, merely a few hours before we met. I'll never forget the feeling in my stomach when I watched it for the first time.
Hey, what's up guys? It's Nick. Welcome to Nick's World Tour. Today we're in the Philippines, where I hear the women are fast and loose. As you all know from my last video, I recently contracted HIV after my adventures in China, so I think it's time to teach the Philippines a lesson. Tonight, I'm gonna try and smash every person I meet so I can spread HIV to as many people as possible. It's gonna be so awesome, guys. Can't wait for you to see it. Coming up on Nick's World Tour.
I was in shock. I threw up because I just couldn't handle it. He was HIV positive, and he was going to try and give it to me? Even worse, he was trying to start an entire HIV outbreak. I nearly fell victim to his insidious intentions, but thankfully, I escaped before it was too late. I sent the video to the police and told them about my encounter, which helped them arrest him before he could cause any more harm. Still, I can't believe he almost infected me. This story was inspired by a 21-year-old Russian vlogger who produced content threatening that he was HIV positive and planned to spread it while filming in the Philippines. Nikita Chekhov was eventually detained. It was discovered that Chekhov had come from China and entered the Philippines on January 15, 2026. In his TikTok video titled BGC Manila, Let's Jack All Everybody and Spread HIV, he threatened to engage in intimate activities with anyone he met and spread HIV. Chekhov was subjected to an HIV test, with results showing that he is non-reactive or does not have the presence of HIV in his body.
This happened several years ago with my ex-boyfriend, Jason. We'd been dating for a while, but he was ruining every aspect of my life. In his mind, I was an object, not a person. I was supposed to do, say, and be whatever he told me. He didn't want me to work or have friends. He expected me to stay home all day, cooking and cleaning, while he was out golfing or going to strip clubs. One day, I realized it had been months since I'd seen my family. He made sure they stopped reaching out to me by convincing them I didn't want to see them anymore, and by limiting my ability to contact them on my own. I was homesick, isolated, and out of options, but it was his reaction when I said I wanted to end things that was truly evil. At the time, he'd taken us to go to some seedy casino way out of town so he could gamble away the rest of my savings. We were staying in a dingy, depressing motel nearby, the kind of place you take a cheap hooker, and then it dawned on me. That's all I was to him, which is what made me decide to finally break up with him. I started by taking a long shower, so I had time to put my words together. When I came out of the bathroom, Jason was lying on the bed. I told him everything, about how I was done being controlled by him, that I was breaking up with him and going home, not to his apartment, but to my family. I grabbed my bag and headed for the door, though before I walked out, I remembered to grab my phone so I could call a cab to get home. But I couldn't find it. That's when Jason abruptly stood up and placed his hand on my shoulder. His grip was tight enough to leave bruises. I turned back, and from the look on his face, I could tell something in him had finally snapped. Looking for this?
Hey, what the hell?
Listen, baby, I thought about what you said, and here's the deal. You're not going anywhere.
Are you deaf? I said I'm not.
From now on, you live here. If you leave this room, if you try to contact anyone, if you even think about going out there and trying to get one of these people to save you, I won't just punish you. No. I know where your family lives, remember? Each and every one of them. I will bring them here and kill them right in front of you, you stupid bitch. Slowly, painfully. And I'll have my fun with your daughter, too, and make you watch. If you ever try to fucking leave me again, you'll be the reason they all die. Do you understand me? Good. Now that we're still a couple, I think it's time you tend to your womanly duties. You want to know my favorite thing about this motel? When the people hear a woman screaming, they think she's just doing her job. I felt like I didn't have a choice. I couldn't bear the thought of anyone in my family, God forbid my own children, coming to harm because I tried to run from Jason. I truly believed he would do everything he promised if I gave him a reason. He was simply that evil. At the motel, Jason treated me like a slave. I had to please him constantly, and no matter how much noise I made, nobody in that motel so much as complained. Jason was right about one thing. This was a place where terrible things happened all the time, and nobody cared. Sometimes, Jason would send me out on errands, usually to go down the street and buy him beer or whatever else he was too lazy to get for himself. I always thought about finding a police officer or going up to a random person to beg for help, but I was too scared Jason would find out and hurt me or my family before anything could be done to stop him. I also didn't know if anyone would care or believe me, as I soon looked the part of a desperate, dirty crack whore because of what Jason was doing to me. That was my life for 6 months, until one day, I learned there was a small library in town, and I felt a tiny bit of courage, the smallest light guiding me to a way out. I knew there had to be a computer there, a way to discreetly get the message out that I was trapped. I begged Jason for days and days to let me go to the library so I could check out a book. I told him I got terribly bored when he was gone, and eventually he caved. At the library, I quickly got on a computer, made a blank Facebook account, and friended some of my family members. Then made the post that finally freed me from the hell I was living in for so long. At last, Jason was arrested, and I was rescued. I got to see my family again for the first time in almost a year. I was ecstatic to be with them, but I learned my mother had died while I was cut off from society. Some things can't be changed, and some wounds never fully heal. Much of the trauma I endured still affects me, but I want people who might be feeling the same hopelessness I was feeling to know that things can get better. A woman held captive for 6 months by a former boyfriend who threatened to kill her if she tried to escape was rescued from a Nevada motel after writing about her plight on Facebook. Her alleged captor, Jason Greiniger, 34, was arrested on Saturday at the motel. The victim had not been physically restrained by Greiniger during the ordeal and was regularly sent to a nearby store for food and beer. She had opportunities to contact police. It just took her 6 months to get the courage to do it. She legitimately believed that he would take her out or hurt her family if she didn't stay with him. Greiniger was being held at the Clark County Detention Center in Las Vegas on suspicion of second-degree kidnapping and also an outstanding warrant. The victim turned to Facebook to seek help after Greiniger allowed her to visit a nearby public library. Her post read, "I just want to let everyone know I'm sorry. I want to come home, but he won't let me." Later that day, police were told of the post and went to the motel where they arrested Greiniger. The victim had been out of contact with her family, including several children, for 6 months until Saturday, and only learned of her mother's December death after being freed.
I was just 18 years old when this happened. On my first St. Paddy's Day as an adult, the girls and I went out for drinks, dressed in green, and partied past midnight. I couldn't have asked for a better time with them, but eventually, we had to go home. Being responsible, we took the train. The streets were already dead by the time we decided to make our way to the subway station. Once underground, we boarded the last train of the night together. We were still lit as we got moving. Each of us lived within walking distance of that same line, but at different stops along the way. Some of us got off in small groups or in pairs, while others left alone, promising to text the group chat as soon as they made it home. One by one, our group dwindled. The train grew quieter, emptier. I was one of the last girls off. I left alone, waving goodbye to the few remaining friends that had stayed with me. The station was a ghost town. I got out of there quickly. I couldn't believe how late we had stayed out. Every intersection I passed was cornered by more empty streets and lifeless sidewalks. And just as I was getting comfortable with the feeling of being so alone, I was not. Close to my apartment, the street was now completely empty except for a single car parked on the curb. The lights were off, but as I got near it, I could hear music coming from inside. It wasn't upbeat music though. It sounded old and out of key. The car was even parked the wrong way, facing me on the same side of the street I was on. Despite everything odd about the car and how dark out it was, I didn't change course. That would only make me cross directly in front of it, which didn't feel any better than walking past it. so I decided to just step a few feet to the side and mind my business. As I walked past the car, the window slowly rolled down. Chills ran down my spine and I started to panic. I averted my eyes and picked up the pace, not wanting to make eye contact. I managed to walk past the car without being catcalled, but then a moment later, I heard the door open. There was no other car on the street. It had to be the same one, but I didn't turn my head to make sure. I just had to keep my cool.
Don't look back, don't engage. You just had a little too much to drink, and they're probably way drunker than you. So just stop being paranoid and...
If I had looked back, I would have seen how close he got and how soon he closed the gap. I just didn't expect it. I never thought people would actually be so evil. My optimism didn't help me. The man kept me silent with a vice grip around my throat and dragged me all the way back to his car. By the time he took me there, I was so close to passing out I didn't have the strength to fight back. He had already overpowered me, and in that state, there was nothing I could do.
Relax, your Uber's here.
Let me go!
Just get in there.
Let me out of here! I'm being abducted!
Shut up! The louder you get, the worse shit I'm gonna do to you.
I don't care! Let me out!
You're already gonna beg for mercy, bitch. Would you rather beg for death?
You're a piece of shit! I hope you crash!
I'll make you wish you never stepped foot outside on St. Patty's Day.
I was in full-blown panic mode. I couldn't think. I just acted on every impulse. Even though the door hadn't opened the last 20 times I tried, I kept pulling the handle as hard as I could. Suddenly, it gave way. The door opened, and I tumbled out without even trying. I rolled across the asphalt over and over, finally skidding to a stop in the middle of the road. My injuries and the pain that came with them should have knocked the wind out of me, made me sit there in agony. But adrenaline is a hell of a thing. I got up without skipping a beat, then started sprinting in the opposite direction. I ran and ran until I plowed into a random man walking the street. He was drunk and confused, probably almost as scared as I was, but he called the police and ushered me to a 24/7 store where I could be safe. Soon, the authorities came, took me to the hospital to get treated, and wrote down my statement. I gave them every detail I could remember. The man's age, his hair, his glasses, his car, but sadly, it wasn't enough. When he kept going after I fell out of his car, that was the last I ever heard or saw of him. He was never found, ever since then. St. Patty's Day triggers this traumatic memory, and at the first thought of going out, my brain forces me to relive this story, the story of how I was almost kidnapped. An 18-year-old woman escaped a would-be kidnapper during St. Patrick's Day weekend festivities on the near north side. The woman was walking on a sidewalk Saturday when a man left a vehicle and grabbed her by her arm shortly after noon. The man placed her in the vehicle, and as the vehicle began to move, the woman opened the door and ran off. The woman ran several blocks north to a Walgreens, where someone called an ambulance. Paramedics took her to St. Joseph Hospital, where she was treated for a panic attack. Police said the woman reported no injuries. The suspect fled in a black four-door Ford. He was about 30 years old and wore reading glasses. Since then, no arrests have been made.
My sister never respected tradition, and I always knew it would get her into trouble. Our father was the head of the family, and the enforcer of all our customs. His expectations for me were manageable, but for my sister, things were different. He wanted her to be just like Mom, listen to everything he said, dress a certain way, and not be outside the house any more than necessary. And then came TikTok. She was able to keep it secret for a while. In the beginning, only I knew about it. I had my own account too, but I didn't use it like she did. All I did was watch stuff, but she posted. I saw her doing all the trendy dances, lip-syncing, and wearing outfits she borrowed from her friends in her videos. When her father discovered her account, he was more furious than I'd ever seen. As usual, I disagreed, but in silent compliance. When he ordered us to delete TikTok, I did. My sister, however, didn't. That became the source of the greatest rift the family had ever suffered. It went on for days, maybe weeks, just constant fighting. Mom took Dad's side, but she was too passive to say much. And though I was on my sister's side theoretically, I didn't want the problems. In private, I told my sister to just delete TikTok and let the issue be resolved. She was old enough that in a few years she could move out and start her own life, do whatever she wanted. But she didn't want to wait that long. One day, I was doing my best to chill in the living room, despite the perpetual tension in the house. My sister was in her room, hiding. When my father went up the stairs, I knew he was about to restart the TikTok issue. Immediately, a screaming match broke out. I was so sick of it I tried to tune it out as soon as it started, but I couldn't. Not this time. That day, my father took things further than ever. Upstairs, I heard fighting, physical fighting, bumping and scuffling, shaking the walls of the house. Something was wrong. I ran up to her room and found the door locked. He had trapped her in there. Hoping the door was flimsier than it looked, I reeled back, then slammed into it. It took a few more painful attempts, but I finally broke through. On the bedroom floor was my worst fear realized. My father was strangling my sister. I had to stop. I had to save her.
Dad, stop! You're gonna kill her! Leave me alone! I have to do this!
No, you're insane! Get off! Using every ounce of strength I had, I ripped my father away from my sister. I had to claw and kick and punch him to get him to stop. Then I had to stand between them to keep him from attacking her again. Finally, he accepted defeat and ran out of the room. I went right to check on my sister. She was in shock, wheezing and coughing, trying to catch her breath. But she was okay, conscious and okay. I helped her sit up, told her everything was going to be fine. And then for the first time in what felt like forever, we had a genuine conversation as siblings.
Thanks for saving me.
Don't mention it. It was the least I could do.
You got that right.
I'm sorry it took so long. I just never expected him to, you know.
It's fine. I didn't either.
This might be a bad time, but do you think you'll delete TikTok now?
Are you kidding? Yes! That shit is not worth it.
Just so this doesn't happen again, right?
Yeah, but as soon as I move out, I'm gonna...
No, what have you done?
Quiet. She brought shame to this family. You gonna do the same?
No, sir.
Then be a good son and help me.
I didn't know what else to do. I had a backbone for just a moment, but then I lost it. I was a coward. I helped my father stage my sister's body with the gun to make it look like she shot herself. Then we turned the lock on her door and closed it, leaving her in there. When we returned to the living room, Mother was there, acting like nothing had happened. Father and I wiped the blood off our skin. The three of us sat on the couch. Then my father calmly called the police. That's when the theatrics began. We all pretended to be a loving family shattered by a sudden tragedy, distraught with grief, as if we'd been unable to stop something terrible, like we hadn't done it ourselves. The police didn't buy it. My father and I had a few days of freedom before we were caught in our lie. We were both arrested. He'll probably die in prison, but I got a lesser sentence for helping him cover it up, since I'm not the one who pulled the trigger, the one who wanted this to happen, all over something as simple and stupid as TikTok. I don't object to my fate. If anything, I deserve to rot for the rest of my life too. But one day, I will get out, and honestly, I'm terrified of that day. I have no idea what I'll do with myself. A man who recently moved his family back to Pakistan from the US has confessed to taking out his daughter because he disapproved of her TikTok videos. Anwar ul Haq was charged with murder after he admitted to taking out his daughter Hira with a firearm. He initially told investigators that unidentified men were behind the shooting. The father said he found his daughter's posts objectionable. Police said they were looking at all angles, including the possibility of an honor killing, which is not uncommon in the country. Hundreds of people, most of them women, die in so-called honor killings in Pakistan each year. These killings are usually carried out by relatives who say they're acting in defense of their family's honor. The victim's father's brother-in-law was also arrested in connection with the killing. If it is found to be an honor killing and they are found guilty, the men will face a mandatory life sentence. the night of St. Patrick's Day, I stayed in. I was in bed and just couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned for what must have been hours. I kept drifting on and off, but then, suddenly, a searing pain ripped through my arm. I shot up and clutched the wound, a deep gash running down the length of my forearm. I looked up and saw my door wide open. Loud footsteps were banging down the hall, like something was running away. Someone had to be in my house. I reached for my phone to call the police, but it wasn't connected to the charger. It was gone. They must have taken it. It was at that very same moment I realized nobody was supposed to be home that night. I couldn't just sit in bed and wait to bleed out, or for whoever broke in to come back. I had to get up and do something about it. I stood up, nearly falling over. I turned my attention to the open door. I couldn't hear the footsteps anymore, but that didn't mean they were far. Quietly, I crept over and stopped just before going through, slowly leaning over to peek my head out into the hall. It was dark, though it seemed empty. But then, I heard this tortured sound. It was distant, but still in the house. The basement. It had to be. But what the hell was it? It was half like a dying animal roaring in pain and half like a person screaming. In spite of my fear, I forced myself out of the room, then carefully made my way downstairs. I started to walk to the front door, but I saw something out of the corner of my eye. The door to the basement was open. A light down there was flickering on for just fractions of a second at a time, blinking spastically. I walked to it, found the switch, and tried to turn it off, but nothing changed. The light kept on flickering. And down there, somewhere, was a quiet voice. I couldn't tell if it was crying, laughing, or whimpering, but it sounded scared. And then a thought hit me. It could be someone in my family. They could have come home early and got attacked. There was a good chance they were worse off than me. I had to go and check on them. And when I reached the bottom, I saw them. They weren't a burglar or a family member. They were something else. In the middle of the basement floor, facing away from me under the flickering light, was something I could only describe as a leprechaun. I stood there in shock. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, pinched myself, but it was still there. It looked small but not harmless, like a human, but far from healthy. Without a good look at its face, I couldn't be sure of anything. Hello? What are you doing down here? What are you... It turned to look at me over its shoulder. That thing couldn't be human. Not a chance. I felt skewered by its eyes, unable to move or speak. I couldn't even look away as it began to grow. It didn't happen naturally. The bones and flesh of this creature broke and stretched over itself again and again as it grew to match my size. It turned its body to face me directly, beginning to tower over me. It never fully stood up, but hung from one hand gripping the rafters, then reached out to me with the other. The hand wrapped around me and drew me in closer, as its jaw began to smile and unhinge itself, making room for me to fit in. I couldn't close my eyes, scream, or fight. I was completely paralyzed. The inside of its mouth with jagged teeth was the last thing I saw, right before I felt it pulsating and pushing me down with wet, rotting flesh, piercing and tearing into every inch of my body. For a brief moment, I thought I reached the bottom of the leprechaun's stomach and found it to be the same as my bedroom, like I was already in hell and doomed to repeat this over and over. But no, it couldn't be. It was just a dream, the most awful, agonizing, and haunting dream of my life. And yet, when I looked down at my arm, it wasn't bleeding anymore, but there was a mark in the same spot, a scar in the same shape as the wound. Nothing like that had ever been there before. The dream wasn't entirely unreal. Some of it had to have come with me into the real world. I didn't know what to make of it. I spoke to my neighbors about it later, expecting them to call me crazy or overdramatic, but their reaction was quite the opposite. Everyone I talked to claimed to have seen a leprechaun in the area. Some claimed it was as whimsical and harmless as you could imagine, but others shared a story similar to mine, and many encounters in between blurred the lines of what this thing could be. I don't know if it's good or evil, but I know I'm not crazy, and I know that wasn't a dream. Every St. Patrick's Day, that night is all I can think about. This story was inspired by a viral internet leprechaun phenomenon that we wanted to do a nightmare fuel on for this year's St. Patrick's Day. It was based on the Crichton leprechaun, which was a supposed leprechaun reported to have been spotted in a tree in Crichton, a neighborhood of Mobile, Alabama. The incident took place in 2006, where news media outlets were alerted to large crowds gathering in Crichton. Later that day, someone drew a sketch of what many witnesses said the leprechaun looked like. The sketch was later auctioned off on eBay, and the proceeds were donated to charity. The piece was aired on 2 different newscasts, which ended up going viral, and turned into some of the internet's earliest viral gold.
As a single mother, holding a regular job isn't enough. I do TikTok on the side. It's easy enough to make videos and do live streams during downtime at work while running errands, or on my days off. I'm doing the damn thing, you know? At least I was, until that night. It was late on a school night. I was driving home with my son in the back seat. We'd been live streaming for a few hours, but it was coming to a close. He was cranky, ready for bed, and I was ready for a glass of wine and some grown-up TV. I remember it so clearly. The roads were almost empty. It was a nice, relaxing drive. All the lights ahead were green. I swear they were. They had to be. I know I was holding my phone, talking to some people in the live chat, but I was paying attention to the road too. I looked down for just 1 second, when all of a sudden, He just came out of nowhere, walked right off of the sidewalk and in front of my car. My light was green and everything. I did what any decent person would do. I immediately stopped, got out of my car, and went to see if the person was okay.
Sir, are you okay? I'm so... Oh shit.
He was okay. I'd seen better, but I'd seen worse too. It was only a bad bruise, really. He was just unconscious. He would wake up though. He had to. I was sure he'd be in pain and probably need some medical attention, but somebody would find him and call an ambulance, right? Yeah, no sense in it being me though. It would only look bad. Not like he would be able to identify my car after that little concussion anyway. Besides, I had my son in the car and, oh no, all those people on the live stream. For sure they were wondering what happened. I had to go back and explain everything.
Mom, is that man okay?
Yes, baby. He's just sleeping. Like you'll be sleeping when we get home.
Mommy, I don't want to sleep like that.
Shh. It's fine. Don't cry. Don't cry, baby.
By the time I got back in the car, the live chat was going crazy. Everyone kept asking what happened. I had to tell them. It was just the right thing to do.
So everyone, I'm sure you all heard that little bump, but it's fine. Everything is fine. It was just a little accident. Not my fault. He walked into the road, but I wasn't going that fast, and I moved out of the way, so it's, he's just got a little bruise, but, just in case, if everyone could donate money for lawyer fees, or maybe bail money.
I couldn't keep up the act anymore. Goddamn TikTok. Always just a bunch of acting and fakery. Nobody's themselves. We always have to hold up some stupid facade because everyone is too terrified to be authentic. I was done. I ended the live stream and threw my phone onto the floorboard. I just had to make it home, put my son to bed, then watch some TV. A bottle of wine, or maybe a couple, would set everything right.
Mommy, are you alright?
Shut up!
If everyone would just stay calm. When we got home, I rolled the car into the garage and made triple sure the door closed all the way. Wouldn't want anyone snooping around and seeing my cracked windshield and all the blood. Bug guts on my car. That would be embarrassing. Once inside, I told my son to go to his room. Thankfully, he listened, but then I was all alone and my head began to spin. It's fine. Just put one foot in front of the other. Go to the bedroom, grab a suitcase, and start packing. Never mind the tire tracks carved through that man's chest. Don't think about the smear where his face used to be. After such a stressful night, I knew it was time for a vacation. I was thinking of leaving my son with a babysitter, but I was worried that would get too expensive, as I didn't know how long I would be gone. Unfortunately, the answer was laid out for me. Early the next morning, long before the sun rose, I was still awake, packed and ready to go. I had a plane ticket to Spain. My Uber was outside, ready to take me to the airport. However, when I opened my front door, 2 policemen were waiting for me. They were there to take me peacefully, and the other 4 cop cars behind them were there in case things went differently. I figured I had traumatized my son enough. No need for his mother to be gunned down in front of his own home. I went with the police, and ever since then, I've been in jail. Maybe one day, I'll get to see my baby again. A tragic incident in Zion, Illinois has sparked outrage after TikTok content creator Tynesha McCarty-Roten allegedly struck and killed a pedestrian while live streaming. The video reportedly captured the moment of impact, followed by her saying, "I just hit somebody." Authorities later identified the victim as 59-year-old Darren Lucas, who died from blunt force injuries. Tynesha McCarty-Roten, a 43-year-old TikTok content creator known as Tea Time, has been charged with 2 felonies. Following the incident, the driver remained at the scene and called emergency services. However, she reportedly later held another live stream asking for donations for mental leave. The police department confirmed the video, and despite the driver's claim that she had a green light, evidence indicated she violated traffic signals while using her phone.
St. Patrick's Day might be the worst holiday. It brings out the worst in people, emboldened by copious amounts of alcohol and mob mentality. If you don't believe me, just know that I have proof. My work takes me all over. It's less common now, but years ago I would often spend more time living in hotels than I did in my own home. Usually, I spent the weekends working out of town. When my job was finished, I would head back to the city for the weekend. One day, I was on a bus heading back into the city after a long week. As we neared downtown, more and more drunk people started piling onto the bus. Even the street was filled with belligerent crowds, and for whatever reason, they were all wearing green. Oh, duh, I said to myself. It's St. Paddy's Day. Of course, I was hardly in the mood to celebrate. I was still in my work clothes, which were highly visible but didn't have a lick of green, and I was aching for a shower followed by about 12 hours of sleep. And yet, the closer we got to the heart of downtown, the more I got an itch. At a particular stop, I saw a bunch of St. Paddy's Day celebrators getting off all at once, so I figured this was the place to be. I stood up and stepped off with them, entering a wildly overstimulating environment. I hoped having a drink or two would help me loosen up, yet I was still overwhelmed. I tried talking to several people, but everyone was clicked up, and it all felt impenetrable. Realizing I was out of my element, I hunkered down at a spot at the bar and started drinking from their well. I don't know how much I spent that night, but it was a lot. By the time the bar closed, I was in deep, on the verge of blacking out. I had enough function left to pay my tab and get kicked out with everyone else without causing a problem, but that was about it. Right outside the bar, I stood among a crowd of assorted drunks, mostly in groups, as I staggered back and forth alone, trying to figure out how to get home. While there, I caught a sight of a specific group of men who had already noticed me. I could hear what they were saying, and I could see them scowling at me, but I knew I wasn't able to interact properly, so I tried to ignore them.
Hey, buddy, what are you looking at?
Don't look away now, bro. We're talking to you.
Yeah, come here.
Can you believe this guy? Taking up space at the bar all night, and he's not even wearing green. I think he should get what he deserves.
As wasted as I was, I knew those guys wanted trouble, so I turned my back and started walking away, then managed to order myself an Uber. Unfortunately, it was going to take 10 minutes to get to me. I figured I could circle the block a few times until it arrived, but I had a problem. I was being followed. Those jerks from the bar weren't finished. I kept thinking if I just ignored them, they would give up, but they were getting closer and meaner with every second. When I finally looked back, I was just in time to see the fist coming for my face. I fell onto my back, putting my arms up to stop what's coming, but nothing I did or said was going to stop that gang of scumbags from beating the life out of me.
Wear green next year, you stupid tourist! Stop, please!
Stomp his throat! Shut his bitch ass up!
No!
Stay out of our city!
Ah! Soon after the beating began, I went unconscious. Being drunk only made me more defenseless, and it kept me under for hours. When I woke up, it was morning. I was stripped naked, and everything on my person had been stolen. There was no sign of the men who attacked me. They dragged me behind a dumpster in a filthy alleyway so nobody would find me, forcing me to crawl out into the street, naked, begging for help. Passerby threw some clothes over me and called an ambulance. I was treated at the hospital, and as I spent the next few days recovering, I started to at least consider myself lucky that I survived with only minor injuries to my body. But that wasn't all. Next week, at work, I got a text from a family member I hadn't spoken to in a long time. They had come across a video of me online. It was from the attack. I had no recollection of being filmed, but I got to watch it clear as day along with millions of other people. As those men continued beating me, even after I'd gone unconscious, they took everything off of me, laughed at and insulted me, and did it with pure and utter joy. I felt absolutely humiliated. It took months and the hard work of internet strangers done in good faith to identify and arrest my attackers. Not all of them were found though. Some of them are still at large. Ever since then, I have loathed St. Patrick's Day. The attack, which police say happened on March 18th after St. Patrick's Day celebrations, was captured by at least 2 cameras, went viral. Onlookers laughed and did nothing to help, as a man was beaten, stripped, and robbed on the street in Baltimore. Police say they have identified one suspect, but have made no arrests. They are not releasing the victim's identity, except to say he was a 31-year-old man from Arlington, Virginia. The victim was on the way to his hotel from a downtown Baltimore club when he was attacked. The man had been drinking. He told police he couldn't recall exactly what happened, but the videos fill in the blanks. In them, a man is seen standing, unsteadily, against a row of mailboxes. A crowd starts to gather and women dance suggestively against him. Someone notices his watch and a hand seems to grab something from one of the man's front pockets. He pursues the supposed thief and is punched in the face. The man falls over backward and his head hits the sidewalk so hard it can be heard on the video. Smack down, someone yells. His pockets are rifled and his clothes pulled off. Some people can be heard laughing, but no one comes to his aid.
For the past 30 years, every single Friday the 13th has reminded me of the most harrowing experience of my life marked by that date. Back then, I was still a young guy at the start of my career as a high school principal, married to a beautiful woman who was pregnant at the time of this happening. At the end of a long school week, my wife and I looked forward to a peaceful, relaxing night in. She made a delicious dinner, while I tried to get ahead on a stack of paperwork I had to do over the weekend. After dinner, we cleaned up together, then sat down on the sofa to catch some primetime television, for it was Friday the 13th. At 8:30 p.m., our television program was interrupted by a knock at the door. I muted the TV. Who could be at the door at this hour? They knocked again. It didn't have any urgency to it. They didn't call us from the other side to identify themselves or state their business. By the third knock, I knew they would not leave on their own. I got up to answer the door, but before opening it, I looked through the peephole to glean a little bit about who this person was. All I saw were yellow eyes, piercing, pressed against the door, unblinking. My wife asked me who was at the door. I looked away from the sulfuric eyes and said I couldn't tell. They were standing too close. Maybe they heard me, because when I looked through the peephole again just a moment later, they had taken a step back, allowing me to see who they truly were. I recognized him, Glenn Milner, an old student of mine from the previous school year, but he graduated. He should have been at least 19 years old by then. What was he doing at his old principal's house in the middle of the night? I did not open the door for him. Something was wrong. I could not risk letting him into the house, especially while my wife was home. I began talking to him, hoping to resolve things behind the safety of the metal door between us.
Glenn, is that you? Good evening, Mr. Williams. Would you please let me inside your wonderful home? I don't think this is a good time, Glenn. Maybe come back tomorrow, in the morning, if possible. I'm afraid I can't do that. It has to be tonight. Why? What day is it even? Friday the... Oh, really, Glenn? Is this some kind of late senior prank? It's a glorious night, Mr. Williams, and I have a job to do. I'm not letting you in, Glenn. Have a nice evening.
I stepped away from the door, looking at my wife with a shrug. She shrugged back. What a weird encounter, we thought together, thinking it was over with. Suddenly, Glenn began banging on the door, shouting curses at us, demanding we let him in. I pointed over my shoulder, signaling for my wife to leave the room in case Glenn managed to break in.
Get back here and let me in, you old bastard!
Listen up, kid. If you don't get the hell off my stoop, I'll call the...
At that point, Glenn raised up a pistol. By the time I recognized what it was, he had already fired it 3 times. Shock took over immediately. I collapsed to the floor, seeing and hearing everything, but not comprehending any of it. I was so confused. I didn't know what the hell was going on, bleeding to death at my own front door. Moments later, my wife rushed back into the room. She crouched over me, screaming and panicking it looked like, with the phone between her ear and shoulder. I could gather that much, but I had no clue what she was doing. Of course, she was saving my life. She slowed the bleeding with her bare hands until the paramedics arrived. Cops swarmed the house too, but Glenn had left the moment he shot me. Killing me was the job apparently, but we'd come to realize I wasn't the only one. That night, Friday 13th, Glenn went on to attack and murder 3 more innocent people, including one of the most promising students at my school. For whatever reason, God chose to spare my life. I was the only one to survive Glenn's crime spree, which he openly admitted to being a satanic ritual. Thanks to my wife, I remained on this earth to raise our family together, but it has not been without terrible hardship. That night affects me to this day, as much mentally as physically. 30 years on, there are still dozens of pieces of metal shrapnel lodged in my body, and as they shift through my tissue and threaten my vital organs, I must undergo repeated surgeries to remove them. But despite the odds, I have survived over 40 operations and counting. As a Christian, I have forgiven Glenn for what he did, but as a man, I know that he must never be released from prison. There is evil in him that will never go away so long as he lives. He said it himself. If he ever gets a taste of freedom, he will finish the job and will kill again. On Friday the 13th of March 1992, 19-year-old Glenn Milner went on a satanic-themed killing spree in Panhandle, Texas, taking out 3 people including a school friend. 35 years after a violent crime spree in Panhandle, a survivor of Kenneth Glenn Milner's attack is sharing his story. I want him to stay there for the rest of his life, and if he gets out, I firmly believe he'll kill again. Psychopaths, they don't change, and that's what he is, said Ken Williams, survivor of the Friday the 13th shooting. On Friday, July 13th in 1990, Kenneth Glenn Milner showed up to the home of Panhandle High School principal, Ken Williams, and when I looked through the peephole, I saw yellow eyes. That's all I saw, and I thought, no, that can't be right. So I kind of blinked my eyes and looked back through, and I saw the yellow eyes again. But then I saw Glenn Milner, the man that was standing there, and he raised it up at that point and shot me through the door, he said. Milner left the home with Williams bleeding on the floor. From there, Milner went on to attack the father of his ex-girlfriend, Jimmy Britton. He slashed Britton's throat and arms with a straight razor. He then took 17-year-old Frankie Garcia to an abandoned barn, where he killed him in a satanic ritual. Milner later confessed to the crimes and was sentenced to life in prison.
Miss you. I miss you.
I never thought getting a girlfriend would be the worst thing that ever happened to me. The truth is, I should have known my ex-girlfriend Amber was a psycho slut from the very beginning. She had this guy friend named Mike. He was 3 or 4 years older than us. I thought I could get Amber away from that asshole, but for some reason, she never completely cut him off. Obviously, It bothered the hell out of me, and I knew without a doubt that it pissed Mike off to know she was spending most of her time with someone else. After a few months of hoping she would come to her senses, the opposite happened. Amber was hanging out with Mike a lot again. He was feeding her lies about me, causing us to get into fights, slowly convincing her I was no good. Without warning, Amber dumped me. I was a wreck. I was filled with so much anger and disgust, feeling betrayed and worthless. The way I saw it, Mike had won. He got his girl back, and yet, things were not over. One night, just a week or two after Amber broke up with me, she sent a text that made my heart ache all over again. She confessed what really happened between me, her, and Mike. Apparently, Mike had been manipulating her the whole time we were dating. He even threatened to snitch on her about all the illegal stuff he bought her if she didn't break up with me, and that's why she did it. Then came the moment I thought I could win her back. She asked me to come over. She'd been hanging out with Mike for days, exhausted by everything he did, and she was missing the way we used to just be together for hours. I snuck out of my house that same night and walked all the way to her place. I knocked lightly at her door. Then she answered and let me inside. I figured the first few seconds would be a bit awkward, but even then, I was taken aback by how stiff and emotionless she looked. None of the heavy, meaningful things she had said over text were weighing on her face. She was just standing in the middle of the room, looking right through me. A chill ran down my spine. In the room behind me, I heard people moving. I turned around just as they appeared and surrounded me. There were 5 other people in the house Amber hadn't told me about, all of them men, and dead center was Mike.
Amber, what the hell is this?
I'm sorry, Seth, but you should have known this would happen.
You bitch! Hey, look at me, asshole. You don't get to talk to her. She's mine. She was always mine. And now you're gonna get what you deserve.
Mike, man, look, I'll just leave, okay? You'll never see me again.
No one's ever gonna see you.
Wait!
Mike didn't even give me a moment to talk my way out. He smashed my face in without hesitating. I knew I was in deep shit the second I fell. Then all I could feel was him and the other guys beating me into the floor. I struggled to get back on my feet, fighting for every inch as they kept pushing and kicking me. After enduring for who knows how long, I finally stood up and started running. I heard Mike shouting for everyone to back off, and for a second, I thought that was it. I got jumped, but I was going to make it. All I had to do was get out to the door and onto the street. But before I could open it, I found out why Mike told his friends to get away from me.
Mike's plan to kill Seth was almost perfect. I don't know exactly why I went along with it. Maybe I was scared of Mike, or I secretly hated Seth as much as he did. If I'm being truly honest with myself, though, I think I always wanted to do it deep down. It was my web of lies that lured Seth into the trap, like the hopeless romantic fool he was. Then Mike and his friends reveled in making Seth suffer. Everyone got in on the fun in their own way, but my favorite part is what came after killing him. We wanted to burn him in the backyard without anyone seeing the body, so we had to stuff him into a sleeping bag. To make it easier, we broke both his knees. It almost seemed like he could still feel pain when we did that, so we shot him again. And Mike let me pull the trigger this time. For the rest of the night, we sat around the fire and watched it consume what was left of Seth. It was a slow and fragrant process which I found absolutely riveting until the fire finally burnt itself out. By morning, there was nothing left of Seth but ashes. Those were scooped into empty paint cans like 7 little urns. We were supposed to each take one and dispose of them separately, but I couldn't part with my piece of Seth. I was the only one who ever loved him after all. Unfortunately, due in part to my trophy, but mostly because of the number of accomplices Mike let in on the plan, we didn't get away with it. It stings to know we failed to fool the world, though I do feel solace in the fact that the world will forever remember us for what we did that night.
A love triangle and bitter Facebook feud culminated in the savage killing of a Florida male who was lured to his death by his former girlfriend. Seth Jackson was hit in the head and shot, but he still tried desperately to flee the home in Summerfield, where the attack occurred Sunday. He was shot again and his body was placed in a bathtub, where his knees were broken so his body would fit in a sleeping bag. He was still alive, so he was shot again, and then his body was burned in a backyard fire pit. His ashes were shoveled into paint containers. Michael Bargo, Amber Wright, and her brother Kyle Hooper, Charlie Eli, and Justin Soto have been charged with first-degree murder. Another suspect named James Haven has also been charged with accessory to murder for allegedly helping to dispose of the body and driving Bargo out of town. Police said the killing had its origins in the animosity between Bargo and the victim.
Miss you. I miss you.
My ex-boyfriend, Jalen, and I got together at the end of high school, and things were okay for a few months. As soon as we started college, though, we never had a stable relationship again. The anger issues Jalen already had got worse. He became controlling and jealous. I finally couldn't take it anymore. I broke up with him. He became an entirely different person. I blocked him on everything, but he kept making fake accounts to come after me. I got calls and texts from random numbers every day for weeks. Unfortunately, I was reluctant to get a restraining order. I didn't know if it would even do any good if he just didn't listen to it, and I also didn't want him to do something even more insane when he found out about it. Besides, I still lived with my dad, so I figured I'd be safe. Over the next few months, I was consistently contacted by Jalen on every platform under the sun, but I ignored every single message. I thought Jalen would eventually lose interest and move on. However, things got much worse. Every night before bed, I like to look out my window. It's just a habit I've had for as long as I can remember. At some point after the breakup, I started to see Jalen out there. He always stood in the same spot on the other side of the street, watching me. It freaked me the hell out, but I would just close the curtains and ignore him. All the doors and windows were locked, so he couldn't get into the house. But I didn't call the cops on him or even tell my dad about it either. I naively hoped that refusing to give him any reaction or attention would convince him to give up. Obviously, it didn't work. Night after night, I saw him out there before going to bed. Sometimes, I even heard noises that sounded like him. I couldn't tell if it was outside or inside the house. I was too scared to check. I just hid under the covers and waited for them to stop. I barely slept. All I knew was that in the mornings, when I got up and looked out my window again, Jalen was always gone, and that was enough. One night, things were different. Before laying down, I checked for Jalen. He was out there in the same spot as always. I was almost used to it, though I still didn't sleep well. I lied awake for what must have been an hour. Then I heard a noise I knew I'd never heard before. I still wanted to ignore it, but something about it made me finally get up to check. Quietly, I crept over to my door, opened it, and peeked my head out into the hallway. I could still hear the noises, and now I was sure they were coming from inside, from downstairs. I turned my head towards my dad's room. His door was open, his TV playing on Myuu, and I could see his feet at the end of his bed. Whatever was making the noise, it wasn't him. When I turned my head back the other way to look down the stairs, I saw the most frightening sight of my life. Jalen! He was at the bottom of the steps with a sledgehammer. I froze, stared at him wide-eyed, every muscle in my body ready to run.
Jalen?
Shh. Go back to sleep, baby.
No.
It's too late. I can't lose you again.
Suddenly, Jalen started running up the stairs. I screamed to wake up my dad and ducked back into my room, then slammed my door. I locked it and started pushing everything I could in front of it. My desk, my dresser, my chair, anything to slow him down. I was sure he was about to start smashing through with the sledgehammer, so I even thought about jumping out of the window to run away. But then, my dad woke up and started yelling. I heard someone run down the stairs. Jalen was leaving. I rushed to my window to look outside, and sure enough, I saw him running across the street, looking back up at me one more time before going around a corner and disappearing. Immediately afterward, my dad and I called the police. They found him on the same night, wandering around the neighborhood. They said he was eerily calm and cooperative, despite all the things he confessed he was planning to do, and all the tools he had prepared for it. Jalen wasn't just going to crawl into my bed that night. He said he was planning to kill me. He was going to kill my father too, if he tried to protect me. This was not the first night he came close to doing it either. Jalen had been breaking into my house and sneaking into my bedroom to watch me sleep for months. Nearly the entire time we'd been broken up. Each time, He came with lockpicks, duct tape, pliers and wire cutters, and of course, the sledgehammer. I still can't believe during all that time, he was in my house, in my room, just inches away. He could have killed me at any moment. I don't know what stopped him, if it was cowardice or a desire to do something worse. I hope I never find out. Jalen Viejos, 20, was arrested on the same night he allegedly planned to attack his ex's father and possibly harm or kill his ex. He allegedly told a deputy that he had been watching his ex sleep for the past 6 to 8 months. Viejos allegedly had a pocket knife, lockpicking tool, sledgehammer, duct tape, wire cutters, a ski mask, and pliers with him on the night of his arrest. Both the ex and her father told police they feared for their lives after being informed of Viejos' plan, and said they did wish to file criminal charges against the young man. Viejos is now being held at the Volusia County Jail on no bond due to the aggravated stalking charge.
Back in my freshman year of high school, we had 2 back-to-back days that everyone was talking about. First was Friday the 13th, and then Valentine's Day on Saturday right after. Personally, I didn't care about Friday the 13th. Valentine's Day, on the other hand, now, I cared about that. See, I had a little crush on this boy named... well, that's not important. The point is, I was going to make sure he asked me to be his Valentine, so we could spend all of Saturday together. That morning, I got up extra early to make sure I was ready. Then, all that was left was my walk to school. I lived on the 10th floor of my building near the top. I entered an empty elevator, but then it stopped on the 9th floor, the very next one down. When the doors opened, I saw a ghastly, creepy-looking man I had never seen in the building before. He was wearing raggedy clothes and holding a cloth, like he was going to the gym. However, when he walked in, he didn't press the button for the 3rd floor, where the gym was located. He just stood right next to me and let the elevator keep heading to the ground floor without stopping. This guy would not stop looking at me. It was so obvious, even in my peripheral vision, that he was staring me up and down. I refused to make eye contact, but it didn't make a difference to him. What made the whole interaction even more perverted was that I was wearing a large backpack and clearly looked way too young for this guy to be interested in me. I wanted nothing more than for that damn elevator to hurry the hell up and let me out. It felt like forever, but when the doors finally opened, I left as soon as I could. I got out of the building and started making my way towards school faster than I ever had. I didn't take any risky shortcuts though. I stuck to my usual route, where I knew there would be people around. Looking over my shoulder here and there, I could see that same guy following me, keeping up with my pace. I didn't know how else to shake him, but to get where I was going. And as long as he stayed a decent distance behind me, I'd be fine, right? Then I rounded a corner on one of the final stretches. As my luck would have it, I didn't see anyone on this block. It was earlier in the morning than I was used to. Not everybody was up yet, and to make matters worse, I was fast headed toward a van parked on the curb. I barely had time to think if I should cross the street before the van, in case it belonged to him, because out of nowhere, I heard him running up behind me. I tried to break out into a sprint, but then his dirty gym cloth suddenly wrapped around my face. It covered up my mouth and nose as he squeezed, silencing me, flooding my lungs with chemicals. I fought, but the weakness overtook me so quickly. He pulled my hair back to peer into my panicking eyes. I saw him smiling down at me, saliva spilling from the corners of his crazed mouth. Then everything went black. If only I could have just died right then and there, but that was just the beginning. I woke up, unable to move my hands. They were bound together with rope, but my legs were free. Without thinking, I tried to get up and run, but then I was shoved back to the ground. I hit my head against a concrete wall, forcing me to look around and to take stock of where I had ended up. Best I could figure was a basement. Unfinished concrete on every surface, chains and metal bars, more like a dungeon. And standing over me was that sick freak from the elevator. He was wearing a mask now, but I knew it was him. It was the hockey mask everyone was obsessed with, and through the holes, I could still see glimpses of his wretched smile.
It's too late to run, stupid girl.
Just let me go, please.
Are you kidding? No one has ever let anyone go on Friday the 13th.
I don't care about Friday the 13th. I don't want to do this.
Oh, I know. You care more about tomorrow, don't you?
Yes, so please, let me go.
No. I'll tell you a secret. Friday the 13th lasts for another 14 hours. Only pure, innocent virgins get to celebrate Valentine's Day. But by midnight, you will be none of those things.
Stop!
So, after I'm done with you, I might as well kill you.
On February Friday 13th, 14-year-old Amber Dubois went missing on her way to school. Her remains were not discovered until a year later, when her killer, then 30-year-old John Gardner, confessed while in custody for a similar crime, which he committed near the anniversary of Dubois' death. Unfortunately, his statement to a reporter that he would be dead within 5 years of being incarcerated did not hold true, as he still draws breath to this day, serving a life sentence behind the bars of Mule Creek State Prison. On Friday the 13th, Amber Dubois vanishes. A year later, Chelsea King disappears nearby. The killer was later revealed to be convicted offender John Gardner, who blamed everything from his major rage to state budget cuts for the murders of the two victims. Gardner, 31, pleaded guilty to the slayings and will be sentenced to life in prison. I was aware of what I was doing, but I could not stop myself. I was in a major rage and pissed off at my whole life and everybody that's hurt me and blew up, and I hurt the wrong people, Gardner said. Chelsea King's body was found in February, 5 days after she disappeared while jogging near her home. Dubois disappeared in February 2009 while on her way to school. Gardner expressed remorse for the murders, but also laughed when asked if there were any more victims, telling the reporter, "Nice try."